Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have some extraordinary news, and I know it's not often I get to say that when I talk about the box office, but honestly, something has happened on a second weekend hold that doesn't usually happen or hasn't in a long time. A less than 50% drop from weekend to weekend. And I'm going to say the Odyssey truly is deserving of what it's accomplishing, but it's doing that with a lot of help from IMAX. Let's just be very clear on that. We'll get more deeper into those numbers during the course of the video, so stick around and here we go. Now, before we get started, just a real quick reminder, we are trying to get to 50K. We're also looking for 1,000 members, so double check you're still subscribed, consider becoming a member, and, hit the bell icon to turn on all notifications. Since people are reacting to me saying those simple things, I'm going to limit them to, well, the shortest period of time I can. Now, let's jump right into the story, because there are many of them here. For example, the box office, according to Variety, the Odyssey holds strong with $25 million on a Friday. And you know what? That's a good number. A $25 million Friday is not a fall off at all. If anything, it kind of puts on display the fact that they include previews with box office on the first Friday when they release the film, which is not really fair. It also usually leads to an extraordinary drop. This time, it did not. And again, the story for a $25 million Friday is just the beginning or the tip of the iceberg. Let's jump in. The Odyssey's $84 million plus, which is actually $87 million. We'll get into that in a moment. That second weekend will be a record for Christopher Nolan, of course, besting The Dark Knight. This is a Saturday update, so that's why it was off by $3 million. It's also wrong on the global million, which it's crossed $600 million already. That's pretty awesome. But at the same time, let's be honest, this isn't adjusted for inflation. So, Agamemnon here is going to look down at whoever happens to be standing in front of them as they are about to sack Troy, which is what this scene leads into. And look, the Odyssey is going to have a big performance. The question is, when it crosses $1 billion, of what percentage of that money does the studio get to keep? Because there are a lot of gross numbers that are going to be called into question because, well, Nolan takes a percentage of gross on first dollar, as does IMAX. So since this is performing so well on IMAX 70 millimeter, they are going to strip out 29% of, well, whatever the take happens to be at the box office. Now, that's just for IMAX. Then you have the 20% split for Nolan of gross $1. And then you get around to the exhibitor splits. So the money just keeps getting divided, and that's a conversation not enough people are having. Maybe our friend over at OMB Reviews is, because Odin does a good job over there. Valiant Renegade is probably doing the same thing, and we need more people to focus in on what these numbers actually mean. In fact, I've got a video coming out later this week that is thoroughly researched in a way that you will see that Hollywood isn't making the kind of money they want you to believe they're making. They are well into the deficit, especially big companies like Disney, who touts a big release number, possibly $6 billion in total for 2026, and yet none of that money ends up in their pockets, or not enough. We'll get into that in just a moment, but we have more to talk about. For example, this film actually leaked, and Universal is responding to those leaks. I guess it's been circulating on X for a while and other places, mostly on torrent sites and stuff like that. But does it really matter? Will it matter? I don't know, because I think this is a strong enough performer by itself that it's going to do very, very well long term. Now, that's despite the fact that I had basically questioned that maybe some of the political garbage that was inserted would affect its bottom line. It doesn't seem like it has too much, but we're also very early on, and Spider-Man Brand New Day enters the market, as I explained in a previous video last week, that's going to do some damage to the Odyssey, because as opposed to this rated R film, it's going to be a PG-13 film, and it'll be more broadly available to a wider audience at a more reasonable price instead of the $25 or more premium price you have to pay to see this in PLFs. So let's get clearly into the numbers. for that $87 million performance, passing $600 million globally, and everything else is coming up roses. This is the best second weekend ever for an R-rated movie, behind only Deadpool and Wolverine, which again was extraordinary at the time, and congratulations to that film as well. But we need to get further into the conversation with the actual numbers. So here we go. You can see here the Odyssey at $87 million only fell 30% weekend over weekend. That is extraordinary. 40% would have been extraordinary, but 30%? Wow. It's still in 3,942 theaters, just under 4,000. It averaged a $22,000 per screening average, even despite the negatives that are there, which is the 3-hour runtime plus the theater turnover, which means there are fewer showings per day. It also is showing primarily very well in PLFs, and the higher gross dollar as opposed to attendance is going to artificially inflate these numbers. But that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Domestically, we're looking at $286 million in 10 days of release, technically 11, but we'll give them their preview day. Now, moving on, we have less good news for everything else that was in theaters. Why? Well, because all the oxygen was sucked up not only by the media promoting the Odyssey, but by the Odyssey itself. For example, the Moana film is a disaster. And we're going to talk more about that again in a video coming up later this week. But at only $10.5 million in 17 days of release, it fell another 41%, and it's in over 4,015 theaters. So at just over $100 million domestic, and not that much better internationally, I'm just going to say Moana's got a long way to make up a lot of ground in order to recover. I don't think it's going to happen. We predicted the billion-dollar performance of Toy Story 5 after it earns $10 million, and it has been in theaters nearly twice as long, if not a little bit more, than Moana. And it's still pulling in $10 million with only a 27% drop. Now, that is only in 3,375 screens, which means people are skipping Moana to see Toy Story 5 with their family. After a domestic earnings of over $448 million, this is more like it, Disney. And you know what? You got one over on people, so congratulations. But you know what? They didn't really like the live-action Moana, so maybe, skip that going forward. I think a lot of people would agree. Now, before we get into the rest of the top 5, I'm just going to say this. It's surprising that more of the new films aren't showing up in the top 5 or even the top 10. A lot of them are premiering to smaller audiences and smaller theater counts. This is telling me that the exhibitors are allowing the heavyweights to weigh in more heavily, which makes sense, but they need the money. The split hasn't been so great, and there were over 30 films that should have qualified for the list, and I don't think I have all of those 30 films represented here on the numbers, but we'll jump back into it and take a look at Hadestown, which is the musical. That's right, at number 4, it only premieres at $9.6 million in 1,949 theaters with a decent screen average, $4,900. In other words, if you look at the per screening average, that would have been second to only the Odyssey. It's only 3 days, or technically 4 days in release, and racking in at number 4. Number 5, of course, is Minions and Monsters, still hanging in that $9.6 million range with a small 29% drop in 26 days of release. It's still a little disappointing at only $155 million. That's not as high as we were hoping for, and I have a feeling that maybe the shine is off the Minions, or at least a Grueless Minions film. This one maybe didn't know what it wanted to be. I was certainly entertained, but I like old school Hollywood a lot more than I like current Hollywood. That's for sure. And finally, after 23 of the 30-some films that were out there in the world, those films reporting in at a mere $139.7 million. Again, in the summer of tentpoles, we should be seeing box offices closer to 200 million, if not exceeding 200 million, and this has fallen very, very short. So that's the box office update. I will tell you this much. I am very disappointed in where all these other films fell. The family audience is probably waiting for Spider-Man Brand New Day. The other folks that didn't go see the Odyssey are probably not willing to spend that kind of money. I have a feeling that overall you're going to see performances fall off for films other than Spider-Man next weekend, and we're going to actually see a little bit of a hit to the Odyssey, if not a substantial one. I think you're going to eat up a lot of the audiences that are willing to pay the premium pricing, and they're going to go into the next weekend protecting their wallet and going to see Spider-Man, and pretty much that's it. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see if you're right. In fact, let me know your thoughts on this last weekend's box office in the comments section down below. As always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya. Hopefully seeing a good movie like Spider-Man Brand New Day.